So hopefully you realize that this is not the ultimate recapping video of any kind, simply because this item has absolutely no capacitors in it. So if anything, this is the ultimate re-resistoring video. So Heathkit RS-1 resistor substitution box from 1952 to 1962. So this thing had a 10-year run. And Heathkit in its day, after that, created several variants of this, all essentially identical, culminating in what would later then be the IN-37, which is essentially absolutely electrically identical, just restyled in new look knobs. We'll take a quick look at this and see what's inside. I've already removed the 4 screws, and we look inside. There's nothing in the box because everything is attached to the front panel, and this could not be a simpler design. It's basically 36 resistors, all wired up to some very cool 16 position rotary switches with no stops, so you can just dial around. And one end of all the resistors is in common. Now let's measure a couple of these. By the way, Bob Eckweiler, Alpha Foxtrot 6 Charlie, has a very long running series of articles going back at least a decade, entitled Heathkit of the Month. And he, of course, did one on the Heathkit RS-1 and its derivatives here. I won't post the article here, but I'll put a link to it in the description. It's certainly worth a read, as are all the other Heathkit of the Month articles if you're into that sort of thing. The easiest way to find those articles is to simply Google Heathkit of the Month, and you should find them very quickly. So definitely worth a read. By the way, according to the Heathkit manual, these are all 10% 1 watts, and obviously all carbon composition. And I believe Heathkit because you'll notice the silver band on all of these, so that is 10%. And these were about the right size for 1 watt resistors in their day. So let's now put this back in the box and take a look at some of the values. Interestingly enough, I did measure all of these, and not all of them drifted upwards. This one happens to be one of the most egregious cases. The 68K resistor measures out at 72K, but some of them are not so bad. Before tearing into the RS-1, I thought it would be interesting to actually measure all of the values, all 36 of them, to see just how far off they were, and the results are kind of interesting. So of course on the left, here are the 36 different values that are inside the RS-1, and they're immediately after that they're measured values after 60 years. The red and green column shows which ones are outside of their original 10% tolerance, and you'll notice only 2 of them are actually way outside their 10% tolerance, and 20%, and those are the 150 and 220s. I'll get back to those. But two other interesting things are, of the ones in red that are outside their original tolerances, first of all of them have drifted upwards, and that's as I would expect. None of these things never seem to drift downwards, and all of them have drifted, with the 2 exceptions, all of them have drifted upwards to be somewhere on the order of 15-ish, 20%, something in that area. And that's what I've seen in lots of other original Heathkit resistors from that era, and how long they've been around. So this is actually consistent with what I've seen in other kits. And in fact, there's only 13, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There are only 14 of them that have drifted upwards outside of their 10% original tolerance. So that's actually better than I thought we'd see. But still, I don't think it's acceptable. So it is worth re-resistoring. The 150 and the 220 that are way outside of their tolerance in terms of drifting up, my guess is perhaps an original user of this thing may have put over voltage on those two resistors and actually damage them. So that's what I'm going to attribute it to. Of course, I have no evidence of that. In fact, the resistors look perfectly fine from the outside. They don't look burnt or anything, but that could happen. Anyway, I thought this was a worthwhile exercise, again, before we tear into it. And that brings up the conundrum of if we're going to do a total re-resistor of this thing, what do we reuse as new resistors? And this brings up a bit of a problem. You'd think, sounds easy. It turns out, it sounded easy to me too, but it turns out it's not easy at all, because you got to do. I want to do a few things here. First of all, I'd like to bump up the precision of these resistors from 10% to at least 5%, and secondly, I'd like to up the power rating from 1 watt to at least 2 watts, and all of that has to fit within this footprint, because this, of course, goes into the box, and once it's in the box, there's not a lot of headroom, or tail room, if you will. So the resistors really can't be any longer than these guys. And so you'd think, okay, easy enough. Just go to Mauser or DigiKey or your favorite distributor and just browse along and, order each of 36 values and within spec, and you might as well order 10 of them at a time, because usually the price for 10 is a fraction of what the price of 1 is, and you'd have them. Anyway, the problem is there are 36 different values, and through-hole resistors, while are easily available, they're not consistently available. Like, good luck finding one manufacturer who manufactures all of these values in exactly the same form factor, the same power rating, the same composition, by the way, and the same tolerance. I looked. It ain't easy. It doesn't exist. So, what to do? And I also wanted this to look, I didn't want to have to butcher this thing and put resistors flying off in all directions just to make it fit. That wouldn't be terribly aesthetic. So after searching the web long and wide and hard, I finally found all of this. Behold, 36 resistors, all of them the same size, all of them 2 watt, all of them 5%, and all of them metal oxide, and a few of the higher value ones are carbon comp. But apart from that, yeah, they're all absolutely identical. And what's more, their size fits and matches perfectly our old resistor, so it won't take up any more room. So, where did I find these? So, first of all, this video is not sponsored. These folks have nothing to do with me. In fact, they don't know who I am or what I use these for. And of course, I paid full price, which, by the way, was not particularly cheap. This is resistor kit number 11 of a company called JustRadios.com, just like it sounds. And they specialize in antique componentry, actually modern componentry for antique radios, as you'd expect. And so they happen to have this resistor kit, which actually has a kit of a total of 400 flame-proof, by the way, 2 watt resistors, and it's 5 resistors each of 80 sizes. So there are far more, obviously there's far more resistors in the kit than I show here. These are the ones that I pulled out that match the 36 that are here. So again, not sponsored, paid for these. Now the key is to how to do this job. So as I've been pondering how I'm going to approach this job of replacing these 36 resistors while not making a hash of this thing, I've come to a few conclusions. First of all, I'm not going to remove anything at all from this front panel because it serves to hold everything in place, in particular, obviously the 2 rotary switches. And by the way, there's a slide switch here. If you haven't figured that out, the purpose of the slide switch is to select whether you're selecting a resistor from the top knob or the bottom knob. And what's nice about the way this thing's organized is the bottom knob is the lower set of resistances, and then for each position, the equivalent position on the top knob is 1,000 times greater. So here I'm at 100 ohms, and here I'm at 100,000 ohms, and so on. So it's organized the way you'd expect with the normal EIA values. The other nice thing is I realized if I take the bottom of the enclosure that this normally fits in, and I turn this upside down, and I screw these back in, this serves as a very nice holder to hold my work as I start removing components here. And then finally, the slide switch, of course, stays in place. I've cleaned it. It works perfectly fine. I'll probably replace the red wires here, which are like 4 different red wires, and that's all that's connecting this thing together with slightly nicer wiring, but that's about it. I also want to preserve this figure 8 bus bar because this is the common of all the resistors, and it's nicely done. In fact, according to the manual, it actually came this way in the parts list. So this piece of figure 8 wire came in that shape, and that's what made building this kit, I guess, not that difficult or just time consuming for the original kit builder, who must have predated me. So this is not looking too bad. We'll try not to butcher first of all, we're not going to hurt the bus bar. We're also going to take care to, as carefully as possible, liberate and unsolder each of the resistors from the rotary switch contacts and not mess those up. And so that's a plan. So the point of no return, we're going in. And forgive the voiceover, but I want to spare you the sound of resistor bodies being scrunched because their leads are being cut off too close to their body. It's very disconcerting, but you can imagine what's going on here. We want to basically liberate the figure 8 bus bar, and we also want to, as you can see, we want to cut from the other side, the side closest to the resistor. So it's just a matter of, one after the other. There's 36 of them that just basically have to be cut, and then the common bus bar will be liberated. These resistors obviously will never serve again. There's that big oddball one, and we keep going, and you get the idea here of what's going on. Again, so the goal here is to not hurt the figure 8 bus bar to the greatest extent possible, because we really do want to reuse it, because as you saw, it actually comes this way from the factory. So here we're just about done. And we're done. Just a couple clicks left, and out comes the bus bar. There's the one connection, the common connection to the lugs, and the bus bar is liberated. Now the matter is, how do we clean off all those little resistor remnants? So the resistor remnants are the little leads that are looped around the bus bar, and here's the perfect tool to get these off. This is my Radio Shack soldering gun from the 1970s, and the way it happens to work is it has an open area that I can stick it inside, and then it just has to provide enough heat. And we add a little bit of solder, because that always helps desolder old 60-year-old solder. A little fresh solder can't hurt. And then we should be able to slide off the looped around resistor lead pieces, and so that works well. It's 100 watt. It's only a 100 watt gun, so 1 amp at line voltage. I wish it were beefier, but that's what I had back in the day. But it's just hot enough, as you'll see, that it helps liberate the solder, and I can then just slide off the little loop resistor leads. There goes one of them off the end, and I'll do these 2 at a time, one pushing the other off the end of the loop, and that actually works supremely surprisingly well, even though I wish that the gun were a little hotter than it is. So again, let's speed this this process up because I think you get what's going on. So yeah, slowly but surely, this process actually worked far better than I expected in terms of being able to heat up and push off at least 2, maybe 3 of the resistor lead loops off the end at a time. So this took less time than I thought, and actually worked pretty well, as you'll see. One last thing is you'll see the green mat that we all have that I'm working on, that's not a soldering mat, that's a cutting mat. So please do not solder or desolder on it. Okay, so at this point I've got all the resistors off of half of the figure 8, this half. The rest still have their resistor bits. But this really isn't as clean as I would have liked it. All the resistor wire is gone, but what can we do to clean, make this half prettier? And I'm going to work on this half before I do this half to make sure what I'm doing makes sense. So let's see what we can do here. You may find this entertaining, so we'll start with this. I think you know where I'm going with this now. So let's see what happens. So first, let's put this in a clamp because things are going to get toasty. Oh, come on. I mean, possibly go wrong with this. Okay, that's good. Now we want some not terribly fireproof gloves, but better than nothing. Okay, and we want to try, we'll start with a very wet scrubby sponge and see if that gets it off. So, you were waiting for this. Here goes. What could go wrong? Let's start with just the end. That's one thing that can go wrong. Ooh, look how shiny and bright that is. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. Of course, we make a mess here, but all right. We'll have to shine this half up somehow, maybe with some, don't know why that's dark. Let's keep going. Hell with a smoke detector. Okay. That is very nice. That is shiny. And that'll be beautiful. Let's let that cool off. Let's put the torch away. And that'll be that. So I'm just going to blow through the rest of this quickly and just mention some lessons learned. First of all, the safety disclaimer. Please do not use a propane or any blowtorch in an office setting or lab setting. That's really not appropriate. You could set something on fire, obviously, and if it's a propane torch, you probably shouldn't even store propane indoors. Propane is significantly heavier than air, so if it does leak, it will pool indoors, and eventually your home or office may make it onto the nightly news, as you may have occasionally seen. You don't want that. So anyway, the other thing is you notice a blue mat. That is a soldering mat. It's made of silicone or something, and it resists solder, and so that's what you should be soldering or desoldering on, not your cutting board. Finally, the thing I was a little worried about is that you notice there was a shiny. In the end, there was a shiny side of the figure 8 loop, and there was sort of a blackened side. And I'm not sure if that was a result of hitting this with a propane torch, but it is possible that the propane torch may damage what appears to be tin-plated steel, because that's what I think this is due to its poor thermal conductivity. Nevertheless, I did test it later. I just wanted to make sure solder would still adhere to it, and it does, especially to the shiny side. So that's all I need in order to do the rebuild. So in a nutshell, that's what I learned so far in this part of the process, which went, frankly, surprisingly well. Okay, so here's where we're at. We've successfully separated the figure 8 bus bar and cleaned it up really nicely. It's separate from all the resistors, so we'll put that away. By the way, at the end of the video, so stay tuned for this, I'm going to make one small change to the schematic to this, which I think is going to be an improvement. So stay tuned for that. So we'll put the figure 8 bus away, and now we've got to remove all these resistors. And they all seem to be bent from the inside out. So, okay. That may be a good thing or bad, but what we'll do is we'll start by adding a touch of solder, very little, to a couple of them, just to see if that helps, and then we'll try the solder sucker as we bend them away. The most important thing is not to damage the rotary switch or its lugs. So what happens if we heat this and just try and remove the resistor? Unfortunately, it is bent. So the best approach is probably, well, we can try one other thing. We could try prying. Let's see, let's try using the, I'm going to digress here just a bit. If you recall, 60 years ago when Heathkit taught us how to properly solder, they made a big deal about wanting to make a solid mechanical connection between the component and whatever it's being soldered to before applying the solder. And the idea was not to rely solely on the solder to hold the component to its connection. And that's well and good, but didn't these people realize that 60 years later we'd have to come around and wanted to disassemble their work? And so that made it exponentially more difficult. What were these people thinking? Couldn't they predict this? Oh well, I digress. So off camera, I've been experimenting a little bit on how to do this properly without damaging the switch contacts, and so I actually did a little lesson, about half of it so far, with different methods. And I think, frankly, the best way is to use the soldering iron and side cutters. And the idea is to heat the connection and, yeah, maybe apply a little bit of solder to refresh the solder. Like so. Just a touch, not much, of course. And heat it all up, and then get in with the side cutter and use the fact that the solder is wet to clip as much of the solid mechanical connection as possible without clipping the any part of the contact or lug. And yeah, or just try and clip it without clipping the lug that it's connected to, just the lead. And then with a little luck it comes right out, and we can add it to the pile of discarded parts so far. And then if there's excess solder, we can certainly go in with the old solder sucker and remove a good bit of it. And there we go. So these are the two tools I found that make this certainly not a pleasure to do, but at least the cleanest possible way. If you can think of a better way, let me know in the comments. But for now, that's what I'm going to continue doing. So here's another one. Again, just heat it up so it's nice and hot and liquid. And then go in and clip that as best as possible. There we go. Oops. Oh, by the way, wear eye protection, because there goes a little piece of resistor flying. And that resistor, oh, it flew all the way out here. Ouch, it's hot. Okay, so we just did one more. I will, however, take off the old wiring from the switch. That comes out a little more easily. And suck that up, suck the excess up. There we go. And just for completeness, the front panel lugs will disconnect their wire as well. Unfortunately, that's a lot easier to do than the resistors. So that one's already done. And there's two more wires going to the, oh, here's another case where someone decided to do a solid mechanical connection before soldering wire. Fortunately, the wire is flexible enough that, well, it might come out. Let's just try clipping it here. And now it should just come out nicely. Ugh, okay, there. And we'll do the same thing on this side. Let's liberate that first. And let's hold that with the clippers just so I don't burn myself. And then that comes out. There we go. And clean up the excess solder. Hopefully you see this. Here. And here. And for this, by the way, the manual solder sucker is more easily handled because it's lightweight and easily pushed down. The alternative would be to use my Hacko desoldering gun, but that's overkill in this case. So I'm going to continue on this and remove all the resistors, and then we'll be back when this is completely cleaned up. Okay, so at this point, we've got all the resistors out. Here are all the 36 casualties. And we've cleaned up the contacts as best we can because we don't want to overdo it. There's no need to, and they certainly don't want to take the risk of damaging any of the contact lugs on any of the switches because that would suck. So now we're ready to add a little tiny bit of wiring and a lot of resistors. And here we are. I've pre-wired the switch and the lugs because it is easier to do that now before the forest of resistors shows up. And I've also removed the outer box because after I put each resistor in, I'm going to want to check that I have it exactly on the right lug because the lugs don't line up with the pointer 100%. So I just want to make sure that I wired them correctly on each one. Once I get the first one, I should be able to do more, but I need access to the knobs. So there we are. We're going to get started. Here's our bag of 36 resistors, and so I'm going to get started on it, and we'll see how it turns out. And although I originally tested each one of these with the multimeter, I'll do that again off camera as I put each one in, just to eliminate any errors. So yeah, it's just a lot of work. All right, here are the first 18 resistors installed. These are the lower 18 values on the lower selector switch. And I did this off camera because, frankly, it's boring. But what's interesting is, as I mentioned, I did measure each one before putting it in, just as a double check, because I don't want to have to remove these. And these are supposed to be 5% resistors. In fact, according to the multimeter you saw, these are pretty much all within 1% or 2% at most, I think. I didn't write them down. What I might do, I might be tempted, is once I get the other 18, is to remeasure them all at the terminals and update the spreadsheet you saw earlier with the new values and see how we're doing. But right now, these 5% resistors are looking pretty good. Now, granted, the multimeter might be only good to 1%, but still, these are all well within 5%. So we're just going to continue. So in order to start installing resistors on the top tier selector switch, we have to know which contact to start with, because the contacts on the rear of the switch do not line up with the knob pointer. They're offset by some amount. So we'll start by turning the switch to 15K, which is the bottommost value. We'll start there on the top tier, and then we go around with the ohmmeter and find which contact that belongs to. The manual does show you which one is which, shows you this view and the numbers of them, and tells you which resistor to put where, but I find it's always easier to just verify. And so we'll eventually find that the contact is actually the one closest to the common one as we go around and buzz it out, and that will be where we start the 15K resistor and go from there. And here is there it is. Yep. Okay, so that's where we put the starting resistor, and I don't know if I'm going to do all of this on camera. If I do, I'll speed it up. But that's where the 15K goes. And now we just install it and all the other resistors. And this is where I finally figured out that a PC board holder will make my life much easier as I swivel it around, check each contact, solder in each resistor, double check it, make sure I put it in the right place, and get the job done. So finally, here we are. All 36 resistors nicely installed and sticking up. The idea is to get them all in as nice a circle as you can, so they're all nice and even. And then, of course, what we do is we take our bus bar and we fit it over inside the circle. And the manual does want you to make sure that all the resistor leads are inside the circles, because that's where they're going to be bent over and soldered to. And no, I'm not going to crimp each one solidly to the bus bar, because that would just exacerbate the problem for the next person 60 years from now who wants to rebuild this with more modern old resistors for some reason. Maybe these will have drifted up, who knows. So basically we're going to make sure that this is all even, and we're going to just bend resistor leads over like that, and like that perhaps, and over here like that, and like that. The idea is we want to hold the bus bar in place with enough of these so we can get started with what I'll consider the more fun part. So here, okay, this thing is now in place, and so what I consider the more pleasant part of this build is coming up now. And so the resistor leads are not going to go all the way around the bus bar. So here we go. Let's get soldering. It is worth me noting that the shinier side of the bus bar is facing up, because that's the side I'll be soldering to. And I've already confirmed, like here and here, by putting little dabs of solder, that the solder adheres nicely to at least this side of the bus bar. The other side of the bus bar was kind of dull and blackened, and again, I don't know why, but that's okay because we won't be soldering to that side. And I'm going to bump up the temperature on the Weller here higher than I usually go. So I'm going to go to like, about 50% hotter, because again, I have to heat up the bus bar each time. So let's just try this one. Am I hot enough yet? A little bit more. Wait. Come on, iron. All right, let's try this one and see what happens. You know what? I have an idea. Let's give this every possible advantage, and that is by just dropping a tiny little drop of flux on each one. And we do want it touching. There, there, and there. Let's see what that does. Okay, so soldering iron is nice and hot. Let's see how that works out. Okay, we are done soldering resistors, I think. Oh, I forgot to clip this guy off. Actually, yeah, I'll clip him off. Pick up his little piece of, there we go. So we're done soldering resistors. A couple of things occurred to me. One is, I've put the bus bar very close to the body of the resistor, probably a little bit closer than it used to be on the old ones. And so when I was soldering this up, I had to put quite a bit of heat on the bus bar, and I'm just concerned that I didn't overstress any of the resistors. I guess we'll find out when I measure them. I'd hate to have to redo all this because I ruined these resistors with too much heat. I don't think so, but we'll find out. Apart from that, all that remains is for me to connect the common to the bus bar. But before I do that, this is where I'm going to make one modification to the circuit, which is not in the manual. I'm going to connect this end of the bus bar to this end of the bus bar and to the middle part of the bus bar. And the idea there is to make it one more continuous entity rather than having current to go all the way around here to wherever I happen to connect this. It'll create a theoretically lower impedance path for all of the resistors. At least that's the theory. It probably won't make any difference at all in practice, but what the heck, it seems like an interesting idea. So I've tinned some just stranded copper wire here, and I'll tack him on. Actually, I could just tack him on into this middle blob which I created earlier. So again, we got to heat this up substantially so it melts, and so I can get my fingers out of the way. Come on, iron, heat the mess up. There we go, and now I'll quickly get my hand out of the way. All right. And now this piece connects into this blob. Ooh, hot, 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 hot. And this end connects into this big blob. Okay, and let's redo the middle one, but I'm pretty sure that's, yeah, that's solid. I don't want to heat stuff more than I have to. Let's cut off the excess here. And this modification probably makes no difference at all, but makes me happy. And now finally, we just want to connect this guy to the middle. So we'll cut him to size. Strip and tin him a little bit. Come on. There we go. That should be solid. Okay. At this point, we are electrically done. And we'll test, of course. Take away the clamp. And let's look at the box again. And of course, notice how much more headroom there is between the end of the resistors and the bottom of the box compared to what the old resistors. So it's not that the resistor is shorter, I just put the bus bar much, much closer to the end of the resistors, and I hope was not a mistake on my part, but obviously fits perfectly in the box. So at this point, nothing left to do but test all the values to make sure all the solder connections are good and see what the differences are. Okay, I'm just going to run through quickly the values to make sure they're all properly connected mostly, and see what the values are like. And yeah, I've got my banana jumpers here from the meter to the box, and I know what you're going to say. You're obsessing with the internal impedance of this thing with that internal short when you're running 2 feet of banana jumpers. But yeah, I know. All right, starting at 15 ohms. 15 ohms sounds good. So we've added 3 columns to our spreadsheet measuring all the new resistors in place, and the good news is, with the exception of the 10 megohm resistor, they are all well within tolerance. Pretty much all of them are within 3%, most are within 1%, so we're doing very well. The outlier, of course, is the 10 megohm one on the bottom, which is approaching 7%. So we're going to re-measure him directly and address that. So yes, overall I'm impressed with the precision of these resistors in this kit, with the exception of the 10 megohm, which is the largest one. So just to confirm, that's the one in here that is technically out of spec by about 7% instead of 5%. And if we now look actually at the resistor itself, I believe that's brown, black, blue, which is this guy here. So you can see that. There he is. I'll try and hold him. Yep, there we are. So yeah, directly across the resistor, about 7%. So yeah, but I was always wondering, I'm wondering if this is because when I soldered this is one of the resistors, it's so close, maybe I overheated it and that caused it to drift. These are carbon film. The ones that are 330K and above are said to be, or by the manufacturer, said to be carbon film instead of metal oxide film. I don't know if that makes any difference, but perhaps overheating this guy might have done something to it. So the way to check that, I pulled 3 other 10 megers from the stash, and we just quickly check those and see what those look like. And one of them is hopefully going to be the replacement. So I'll start with this guy. This one is 10.3. So yeah, 3% off, so within spec. Let's try this one. .26 and 10.3, about the same. So within spec. And finally this third one. Oh boy. This one's not looking good. This one's 11 meg. So this guy's 10%, almost 11% off. That one is, I'll call it way out of spec. So I'll flag him. Well, maybe I'll put a little dot or something so I don't use him, or at least check him again. So what this tells me is that it might very well be that the one I just happened to pick to mount here was out of spec, not quite as bad as this one, but it's just, I guess, luck of the draw. You'll get a couple of, I won't call them duds, but yeah. So I'm going to pick one of these two and use him as a replacement for this guy here, and we'll see how that goes. And I probably will do this off camera because it could get ugly. Although, because I did not make a secure mechanical connection, this should be a heck of a lot easier to remove this guy. So as I replace the 10 megohm resistor, I just want to point out later on you're going to see me take that old resistor and measure its resistance directly. Then I'm going to apply the soldering iron just underneath it to heat it up, and you're going to see that it exhibits a negative temperature coefficient, which means as the temperature goes up, the resistance goes down. And that's probably why it's not such a horrible thing that the resistors all measure slightly higher than their nominal value within spec, but slightly higher, because by definition, as resistors work, they get hot, so they will tend to come more within spec. At least that's my theory, but that's what you're seeing here. And so now as we finish up. So here is our completed Heathkit RS-1 resistor substitution box with the brand new 10 meg, and in fact all the brand new resistors, and now everybody is well within not just 10%, not just 5%, but around 2% spec, if not better. One other thing I always do when I redo my Heathkits is external screws at the very least. I change to Phillips, so brand new shiny Phillips heads here that are holding the slide switch in place. However, I did not. I would have liked to swap these for Phillips, the corner ones, but I couldn't. Why? Because I didn't happen to have Phillips head 2-inch or 50mm long screws. And the reason they come this way, and they aren't actually screwed in yet, is that the box, I don't know if you can see this, but the box's mounting bosses here are all the way at the bottom of the box, so they need long screws to reach it. Interestingly, these are not self-tappers, these are machine screws, but they're still threaded into pre-threaded plastic, I guess. So that's how they made the RS-1. And the reason I found this interesting, and I'll screw that in a bit, is by contrast, when Heathkit, a decade later, came out with the absolutely identical IN-37 version of this in the new look styling, these do not use very long mounting screws. They use much tinier, and these are probably number 4 or number 2 screws, and they redesigned the box so it's mounting, it's self-tapping. And these are also machines, by the way, but they tap into the plastic at the top of the box here, so that's how they redesigned it. Apart from that, it's electrically the same, so maybe this guy will be another candidate for re-resistoring, and I probably will not make a video about it because it's basically the same process. So anyway, here we go, the RS-1 all done. Thanks for watching.